Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love That Lasts, the relationship podcast. On today's episode, I will be visiting with Aubrey Kingsbury. Aubrey is a professional soccer goalkeeper for the Washington Spirit of the National Women's Soccer League. She began her professional career after graduating college in 2015, and she began playing pro in Norway. And her pro career has really taken her all over the world and now bringing her back to the nation's capital. She was named Goalkeeper of the Year in 2019 and 2021 and helped the Washington Spirit win the league championship in 2021. She got her first national team call up at the end of the 21 season and represented the U.S. women's national team at the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup. Fantastic. And when she's not playing soccer, she's spending time with her wonderful husband and two dogs, and they are expecting their first baby in July. So, welcome, Aubrey. It is so nice to have you on today's episode of Love That Lasts.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. I'm really excited to just talk about this and field some questions different than soccer.
That's right, a whole different kind of space to
Exactly.
step into, but I'm deeply excited. Just to give our guest a little context about how I know you, as a professional soccer player, you also serve as an ambassador for Play for More, which is a nonprofit organization that my husband, Jason, began. And it's dedicated to using the game of soccer to improve the lives of children, underrepresented children, refugee children, vulnerable children. And the mission is really targeted at fostering joy, confidence, education, and community engagement through the game of soccer. Also, soccer camps and this buy one, give one purchasing process where you can purchase a ball and a ball goes to a child in need. So, as an ambassador, Aubrey has helped to design a ball. So, I wanted to show this, kind of debuting it here on the air today. Beautiful kind of coverage of colors, and then this wonderful logo that signifies something really important to her with a Bible verse. And so
Mhm.
this ball is going to debut on the Play for More website, and it's a buy one, give one initiative. So it goes for a great cause. What was that like designing this ball, Aubrey?
Yeah, honestly, I was really honored just that Play for More reached out and wanted to partner with me. Because yeah, I love everything they're doing. Um, and yeah, just for them to pick me and to work with them in the process. They had a great designer, Trey, who helped kind of my vision come to life, and can't be more proud of the finished product. I've got a couple myself and have been kicking them around with some of the local kids around here. So just really cool to see my name on there, but not just that, like one of my favorite Bible verses that has been very impactful for me in in my life. And then just a little story behind the ball. It's
Yes,
meant to be
please.
somewhat like of a kind of like a ribbon, um, with like the
Yeah.
double meaning of like all of life, and soccer specifically is a gift. And follow the twists and turns around the ball, and kind of just symbolizes just the wild ride you're in for when you say yes to Christ. So yeah, very meaningful. It's not just like a pretty ball. But yeah, there's a lot of cool elements to it that they really brought to life.
Yeah, and with the ball still here in my hand, this is that beautiful ribbon effect that you see that Aubrey's talking about here. The symbolism is really lovely, and I love how you bring that out even in the design. Colors are great. Yeah, my 12-year-old, he definitely has been kicking one around our house too,
Oh,
so it's a fun one
hopefully
to have out.
outside, not too much
Yeah,
indoors,
yeah,
right?
we try mostly for that for sure. Absolutely. He's a big soccer player. So soccer is a
Oh,
big love in
good.
our house. But this is again as I kind of watched your work with Play for More and the things that I was learning about. I just knew you would be a great guest to have on our podcast, Love That Last. I know your faith is important to you. I know that your marriage is important to you, soon to be a mom. And to see you out there in a professional role like this, but also as a person of faith, I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to have you sit down and we visit today a little bit more about this.
Yeah,
So
thank
let,
you.
yeah, thank you. So I'd like to just kind of get a little insight just about your story. How did soccer become such an important part of your life?
It all started just with my family. I'm one of four. I have a twin sister, and two brothers, one older, one younger. My parents are both athletes, and we kind of tried everything. And we play outside, we play with the neighborhood kids. And soccer was kind of the thing that stuck. I'm a goalkeeper, which, to be honest, I wanted to be a forward. I wanted to score the goals, but I had a bit of a talent and a knack for the goal, just being also a basketball player and good with my hands and reflexes.
Yes.
So kind of got stuck back there, although I didn't love it at first. And yeah, it's just something that my family always really embraced. And I think the competitiveness amongst my siblings and I really helped me reach another level. Just the athleticism I had from being encouraged to play numerous sports and activities and had great family support. So I've stuck with it. And honestly, I'm as surprised as anyone that I'm still here, in my 30s. I've had a 15 plus year career now and
That's
testament
fantastic.
to, yeah, where the Lord has led me.
Well, isn't it awesome that something that was kind of this childhood sport that kind of stuck for you has now turned into a career? So you
Yeah,
literally, getting to just kind of fulfill a lot of children's dream of
right.
taking the love of soccer and really turning it into a career.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the cool thing to point out, just real quick, is when
sure.
I was growing up, we didn't have a women's pro league. There were actually a couple iterations of it that had all failed after 3 years. And the current league is called the National Women's Soccer League, the NWSL, and we are in our 13th season, I believe. And yeah, it is a viable career option. So for young girls out there, like it's so cool that they can grow up knowing like they can be where I am and not have to worry like is that going to be a career I can pursue? Like it's definitely thriving and love seeing all the women's sports ecosystems just grow across the country.
I'm with you right there. That's wonderful. And I love it's just a shout out to encourage young women to see that as a potential for their
Hmm.
future as well. Your story is really living proof of that for sure. Well, as we turn our attention a little bit more into our conversation related to this relationship podcast, things that I know that are important to you beyond soccer are your faith and also your marriage. And I just wanted to kind of maybe start off asking a question that kind of blends a little bit of the soccer with kind of some of your own personal life. But you're in this high performance career playing soccer, but also goalie, which, man, that can be some nail biting
Right.
moments in that role for sure. How do you stay rooted in your identity in Christ, Aubrey, rather than just your performance?
It all starts with how I start my morning. Honestly, I have a Bible reading plan that I follow along with my church. And so in the morning, first thing before I look at social media, any notifications on my phone is I start reading the Bible. And I think that just kind of sets the tone for the day. Like that's the first voice that I hear, the word of the Lord, and not a coach, not a headline, not media, not a tweet, anything like that. Um, because yeah, there are a lot of voices, and like I said, as we've become more professional, we've gotten more fans, we've gotten more critics,
Right.
and it is a performance industry. Like you have to perform, or you lose your job. So before I take any other outside input, I'm rooting my identity in who I am in Christ and not basing my worth on my performance on the field, but solely in my identity and who I am in Him. So that kind of sets the tone. Obviously, some days it goes better than others,
Sure.
right? But I think that's the most important thing for me personally.
That's really beautiful because you're really talking about these just kind of these habits, these practices that we take on. Obviously,
Hmm.
as an athlete, you have to do a lot of practicing of your sport. But I think the same is true as being a follower of Jesus. Like, how do we practice that walk, right? Not perfectly, but by his grace. But for you to talk about this habit that you have every day of getting up and letting God's word be the first voice you hear, I think that is really impressive and beautiful. That makes sense to me then why you put a verse on the ball as well.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure. Do you have kind of a go-to verse that really is really inspirational to you, even in your career?
Um, kind of changes as,
Yeah,
different seasons or themes kind of present themselves in my life. For instance, there was one year we were just absolutely terrible as a team, like last place, couldn't win. And as a goalkeeper, it felt personal because I'm giving up a lot of goals. And kind of a verse that stuck to me through that season was First Thessalonians. I'll have to look back at it, but rejoice always, pray continually, for this is um, God's will for you. And it was just kind of like, for me, like there wasn't much to rejoice in that
right.
season, but yeah, just rejoice in all circumstances, rejoice in all
That's
circumstances.
right.
That was just kind of something that I kept like meditating on, and yeah, just trying to be thankful for whatever the Lord has given me. Because yeah, there is a purpose for all of it, the good, the bad. Maybe you can't see it, but ultimately, if that's where the Lord has you, He's probably trying to teach you or show you something. So I was just trying to tap into that.
Yeah, as you said, kind of dig deep. And really that's what's beautiful about kind of our faith walk and when we do ground ourselves in these practices like scripture reading, we really can draw upon it in times where it's hard.
Hmm.
And yet that becomes kind of the root system though that does really ground us. Well, let's talk a little bit now, a bit more about the subject of kind of dating and marriage. And just thinking about your perspective on this. So you're married now, and you've been married for how long?
Yeah. 4.5 years.
4.5
Yeah.
years. Yeah, you're still in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
But when you think back to the period of your life when you were dating, what were qualities that you were looking for in someone that you wanted to kind of keep in the forefront as you were dating and thinking about maybe
Mhm.
someday getting married?
Yeah. Foremost, like someone who loved the Lord, someone who was kind, had a servant's heart. I think as women, like we have these really long lists, right? Like of things we want to tick off of. And yes, that's important, right? Like you have to align on the most important things. But I think something I learned in my dating life, that I was more concerned about like ticking the boxes than actually getting to know the soul and the human behind
Right.
those attributes. Like it was like, oh, good, like check, he's got that, or um, just like
Sure.
yeah. But yeah, those were the most important things. I will say that I think when I was younger and just being a pro athlete, there's a lot of crossover between, my teammates dating, marrying pro baseball players, like, other famous people, things like that. So I probably was a little bit more vain in who I thought I was going to marry. Like I think every girl around my age, like I was like Tim Tebow or bust. Like this is, this
I love it.
godly man who's a professional athlete. But I think over my dating life, I kind of released a little bit, not to say like compromise, obviously
Sure.
it's really important um, that who you date shares similar values and beliefs. Um, but I think I was just more open to like who the Lord hadn't, intended
Sure.
for me, rather than looking for like a male Aubrey. Like, thank goodness
Right.
I didn't get everything I thought I needed, because he had something way better.
Yes. And maybe he exceeded your list, right? Like
Oh
we
yeah,
have
for
maybe
sure.
a short-sighted perspective, but then we realize, wow, there's qualities maybe in this person that it's like, wow, that's a really good one to have.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of it's being realistic, right? I mean, maybe when we're younger or we're thinking about that person, we look at it through kind of an ideal lens, but the reality is none of us are perfect.
Hmm.
And I think there's the notion of having good values that you're working from, but also the realism that you have to know that people are human. And we
Right,
can't
right.
expect to kind of just find the person that's going to be perfect in all areas.
Hmm.
So, what advice would you give maybe if someone was listening that's in that dating phase? What would you say to them that might just be encouraging just about how to go about this process well?
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, we're all sinners, right? Like you're saying, we're all imperfect. So the concept of a perfect man doesn't exist. But I think the most important thing to look for is just someone that you enjoy spending time with. Like with my husband, it just came really naturally and easy. Not saying we didn't have to like work at it, but we just went from one date to the next, and I was like, oh, that was great. Like I can do it again. And I think so much of me wanted to look down the road and like be like, oh, is this my husband? Like on date two or three, but you can't know that. Like
Right.
it takes time to get to know someone. So yeah, just find someone that, yes, the values align, but also like, do you enjoy spending time with them? Do you bring out the best in each other? And, don't make it too complicated. If it's yes, keep working at it and yeah, see where it takes you.
That's good advice. What has marriage maybe taught you about love that maybe dating never did?
Oh, yeah. Marriage is a covenant, right? So it's not this wishy-washy commitment that you can say like, I don't think you're the one, when things get hard or um yeah, when you're dating, like there's always maybe that little bit of fear that the other person can reject you or leave. But marriage, it's for life. And so I think something that I've really learned is I personally love to be right, as does my
Uh-huh.
husband.
The
But
competitive nature coming out.
yeah, right. Surprise. Like at the end of the day, we're on the same team. Like
Well
we
said.
share the same goals. So even if I win, right? Even if I prove myself right, like usually ultimately I've lost because it's at the expense of our team. So,
So true.
yeah, we both kind of had to learn that, I think, in the first couple years of, um, would we rather be right or would we rather be loving? And sometimes those come at odds with each other. But yeah, I think ultimately you're on the same team. You've committed um, to this covenant for life, and so ultimately, like, how can we sacrificially serve one another? And it's not about yourself.
Yeah, well said. And I love that team analogy. I think that's a really good
Hmm.
perspective because when you're on a team, in essence, it's not about you. It's not this is not a solo
Right,
sport, so to
right.
speak, right? And so we're in it together. And hopefully it's this idea of iron sharpening iron. I want good
Mm.
for you, you want good for me, which then ultimately betters the marriage when we think about
Hmm.
it from that perspective. How does your faith walk, just, noticing that, God loves you, how does that even just shape the way you love your husband?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing to accept God's love. Because until you have that, like you can't pour it out for others. And until you accept that, then you will always be seeking that from others. So, um, again, we're all sinners. We're not perfect. There are days like my husband's a little cranky. Maybe he's not the most loving. Same for me. But I'm not looking for him to fill a hole, a desire that only the Lord can.
Well
Um,
said.
yeah, so I think that's the most important thing is first and foremost, like we are sons and daughters of the King. That is where we're rooted, and no one else can give you that sense of purpose, identity, and ultimate security that only that can give you.
Yeah, I love that. I teach this relationship class at ACU. And so
Oh,
I've got all
nice.
these undergrad students, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to discuss lots of things about relationships. But we talk about that very thing related to like if you're dating and looking to kind of be in love, is have a healthy perspective on this
Mm,
relationship. Don't look for someone else to complete you or for that to be your
mhm.
identity. That's too much pressure on anyone.
Oh, yeah.
But also I think it moves us a little too close to kind of idol worship, right? That we're
Oh,
looking
yeah,
for
for
someone,
sure.
yeah, we're looking for someone else to kind of be that for us when really that needs to start with God, right? That's where
Mm.
our identity lies as his son, his daughter, so that we can then not put these unhealthy expectations on other people in relationship.
Yeah, like good things can be idols if they take you away from your relationship with
Yeah.
the Lord, right? So we think like, oh, but this is great, like, this is my husband or this is, someone, my fiance. But ultimately, like you're saying, it can still be an idol. Yeah.
Right. Well, also, I think this might be really interesting for listeners. Here you are in this professional sport. You've got a demanding schedule. Could you talk for a moment about any unique challenges that come with being a professional athlete as you're trying to do your job, do your sport, but also really carve out intentionality around your marriage? How do you kind of navigate some of that tension?
Yeah, we have a unique, work schedule given work on the weekends, right? Usually we're on the road about every other weekend. Sometimes it can be for weeks at a time if it's preseason camp or an international tournament. So it's just kind of understanding that, like, there will be times where there's less time to talk, there's less time to spend together. And then knowing that, okay, when I come back, like, we will carve out some time intentionally and just not letting that kind of go by the wayside. We're both really good at yeah, spending quality time together. We really enjoy each other, so it's
Yes,
easy.
makes
But
it easy.
yeah, he's a great servant. For example, I come back from the road, he'll pick me up at the airport and have a home cooked meal waiting for me. So things
What a
like that,
guy.
yeah, things like that go a long way. But he also kind of just understands the lifestyle and doesn't put pressure on me to FaceTime all day on game day or this and that. Just kind of gives me the space. But I also think it's nice to just have little check-ins. If it's just a little 5-minute FaceTime or like a text, hey, thinking about you, really doesn't have to take too much time. But I think little gestures like that can go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a word I think about as you are talking is just being intentional. Is
Hmm.
that, even during busy seasons or even when you're home more, is like
Hmm.
treating your marriage with intentionality, right? Trying not to take
Right.
each other for granted, but what are the things that we can do to show our spouse we love them, we care for them in meaningful ways. So I love that. Well done to your
Hmm.
husband for cooking a meal.
Yeah,
My
he's
goodness.
great. He's a good chef.
What's his go-to? Is there a favorite?
Um, well, we have a smoker and a Blackstone, which I highly recommend for, yeah, all the men out there to treat your women. Um, yeah, anything he throws on the smoker. Or yeah, we like just grilled chicken thighs, sweet potatoes. Pretty simple, but yeah, he
But
does it well.
yummy.
Yeah.
I love it. Um, Another thing, we have talked about this before on a previous podcast, actually with author Tish Harrison Warren, but trying to normalize that all marriages are going to have moments or seasons where it's a little harder, right?
Mm.
And it will look different from couple to couple. Because I find sometimes in my work, I'll do marriage seminars and retreats for churches. And I think sometimes even in Christian community, there's a little bit of this kind of stigma of, okay, we should kind of act like we have it all together.
Mm.
When in reality, all marriages are going to have places where we're going to have some tougher spots. We can deal with
Hmm.
conflict. We can deal sometimes with just our own selfishness or, getting busy and not making time for each other. I was curious, just from your perspective, when we think about this notion of maybe even when conflict can pop up, what is your advice about just trying to handle conflict in marriage in this kind of healthy, kind of Christ-centered way?
I think it's important to address it early because usually it doesn't ever like start as something big, right? It's a bunch of little
It
things.
builds.
Yeah, yeah, right. Like maybe you feel misunderstood, but you don't really say anything about it, or you didn't like something, or then all of a sudden, yes, it festers and maybe you've created this narrative in your mind. So yeah, it kind of comes down, at least I've noticed for me, is like a lack of understanding or miscommunication. So that's something we've gotten really good at. And a lot of times my husband wants to be the problem solver. And me, I just want to vent. I'm not looking for him to give me a solution. It's just like I need a hug,
Right.
So something our pastor actually says is the three H's. Like, do you want to be hugged, heard, or helped? And so
Mhm.
sometimes I think it helps to use that framework. Like, hey, I don't want to be helped right now. Just like hear me out and give me a hug, and then that helps him. So like, okay, she's coming from this angle and yeah, it doesn't necessarily need a solution because that's where his default goes. Yeah, I think if the more you can kind of understand like what your needs are and communicate those, and ultimately your partner should want to fulfill those. So if you can, yeah, kind of get good at speaking in that
Yes.
language, I think that avoids conflict and just yeah, trying to squash it early.
Yeah, I love that. So the three H's were hug,
Yeah, hugged, heard, or
held.
helped.
Yeah, okay, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's a good little thing.
yeah.
Well, and I think what you're speaking to, and this is really great advice, is don't let things just linger. And it's so
Mm,
easy to kind of put things off, or if one person or both is a little more avoidant, but when we let things linger, that creates a problem. And then just also this importance of like clarity, like being
hmm.
able to kind of make sure we understand where each other's coming from or what kind of your needs are, your expectations are. I think that goes a long way because you're right. Oftentimes, when conflicts start getting really difficult, if we were to kind of backtrack, we probably would see that it's kind of had a building effect.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
there's been other things that haven't been resolved and this is just kind of piling on. So I love that idea of intentionality, of like being clear, don't let things just kind of linger.
Hmm.
Those are really good points with handling conflict. Let's talk a little bit too about just in terms of kind of just marriage and also just kind of individual well-being. What are the things that you and maybe your husband try to do to kind of just stay healthy physically, emotionally, spiritually, as individuals, but also as it might play out, within your marriage?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, we both do like a Bible reading plan in the mornings. So that's a nice kind of like touch point of if we found something interesting or if it spoke to us, like we can, talk about that.
Do you do
Um,
the same one? Are y'all like tracking kind of on the same
yeah,
one?
yeah, we have a
Okay.
daily calendar. So
Oh, that's
I know
cool.
like, yeah, we've read the same bits of scripture. And I mean, he might be reading it at 4 a.m. before he goes off to work, and then I'm at like 9. But ultimately, yeah, like this every day we, are in the same book of the Bible. But so that's just one thing. We like to have little devotionals at the end of dinner time. So we'll just read different books. We're doing Tim Keller's
Yes.
devotional right now on Psalms is really good. We've done Proverbs before, done like a marriage one, just kind of just little page that we just pop out after we've finished dinner. That's another little touch point. Then also, if our off days align, we love to go for runs together with our dogs. But even if it's not an off day, because I can only get so much extra fitness, right?
Right.
Usually I come home and I'm pretty exhausted. But when we both get home from work, we always walk the dogs together and no phones, just like a great time to kind of talk about our day and just, the longer you walk, it's kind of like, all right, you get past the just basics of the daily details and can kind of,
Yeah,
talk
start
about more deeper
connecting.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
connecting
So
more. I love that.
strangely, yeah, I think having a dog and taking your dog on lots of walks is a great relationship building tool. But
Absolutely. My husband and I
yeah.
started doing that, especially during COVID. And
Nice.
we've got
Yeah.
this big golden retriever, and he loves
Oh,
probably 2 walks a
high
day.
energy. Oh yeah.
High
See,
energy. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. He needs a
Yeah,
couple of
he
walks a
needs those
day.
long walks.
And
Oh
while we
yeah.
don't we don't do all of them together, it is special. I get that. Like the
Yeah,
longer we
yeah.
walk, it's a good time just to talk. Sometimes we'll pray
Hmm.
together as we're walking with our eyes open.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but
nice.
it's good time. And for you guys, you're about to be able to start walking and pushing a baby stroller. So
Yes.
uh,
Yeah, well, two dogs and a stroller.
yeah. Plenty of steps
Oh,
you're going to get in. I
yeah,
love it.
exactly.
But those are just great practical things that you guys,
Hmm.
try to do just to nurture your individual walk, physically, spiritually, but also connecting in your marriage. I like that idea of the Bible plan, Aubrey, of like
Hmm.
both of you are doing the same thing because later in the day, like, maybe it might pop up, maybe not every day, but like, hey, what did you think about that? What we read
Yeah,
today, or
right,
give
right.
some thought around it. It makes it more communal than it just being
Exactly.
an individual activity. That's
Hmm.
great. Okay, so moving into a little bit more related to you being a professional athlete, and also for just young women who may be listening to this podcast, what advice would you give to a young woman who's trying to pursue some big dream in her life, but also a meaningful relationship? Any thoughts around that?
Mm. Yeah, you can do both. I think a lot of times those feel at odds with one another. Um, I certainly felt that way. Like, yeah, I kind of moved all around the world with my career, and I'm like, how am I ever going to find a man? Like, um, but yeah, if you just honestly, it sounds cliche, but just trust in the Lord and His leading for your life. Obviously, there has to be a bit of a willingness to like put yourself out there, right? Um, but yeah, I don't think we should, as women, like compromise, yeah, our values or standards. I know when I was younger, I certainly like would, oh, is he a Christian? Like he says so, check, and then like
Mm,
move on. Like don't ask
yeah.
any questions, just because, it wasn't faith wasn't always important to the men that I dated. And when I was younger, frankly, yeah, like that wasn't as a priority as it was for me. But I think so many times, like as women, we're looking for a man to help fill that hole, right? That we said earlier that only Christ can. Um, but yeah, don't. Yeah, I guess I would say don't compromise. It is possible. Be true to like who you are, and yeah, ultimately just like trust in the Lord and His leading for your life.
Mm,
And I mean, no one is promised a husband. That is not
right.
a gift of following the Lord by any means. But yeah, the Lord does delight in giving good gifts to His kids, and um, yeah, so it is something we can certainly pray for and ask for as a believer, and the Lord hears us.
Yeah.
And like I said, yeah, He delights in giving good gifts to His children.
Yeah. Well said. I love that. I like what you said at the beginning of that is that it's not about choosing one or the other, right? Like pursuing a
Mm-hmm.
dream or pursuing a meaningful relationship is the potential to think about how to do both of those well, if that's what you're after.
Mm-hmm.
When you think back about kind of your younger self, would there be any advice that you would give your younger self when it came to relationships?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, like I think I was just eager to be in a relationship and to kind of feel a little bit of insecurity, or just, not be left out in the social scene kind of thing, where, yeah, I did maybe jump into things a little bit too eagerly where I shouldn't have. But um, yeah, I think there is a lot of pressure on young people, and yeah, we look to kind of fill voids in
Yeah.
ways that we shouldn't.
Yeah. That there's truth to that for sure. And to your point a moment ago is also kind of, you know, giving self kind of an opportunity to get to know someone in different contexts, not to rush through
Mm,
things. Like as you said a moment ago, like you were really interested in wanting to end up marrying someone who's a Christian. That was really important on your list.
hmm.
But I think John Mark Comer actually kind of writes about this and has said, it's one thing to kind of like have the name Christian, but another to be an apprentice of Jesus and like
Mm,
to be a follower of his.
right.
And sometimes maybe the word Christian gets used a little loosely, but a follower of Jesus, we're going to start kind of seeing that with these habits, right? The patterns of life that are
Exactly.
going to kind of
Right.
show. And those are things you've got to see in people over time in different contexts. Not, again, perfection, because that's just not what it's about, but really the formative practices of that walk that become
Hmm.
important to look for. Okay, so I know we're about out of time, but with this being a relationship podcast specifically, how can we help people to think about building a love that lasts, whether they're dating, wanting to pursue a relationship, maybe engaged, or have been married 1 or 50 years? How do you build a love that lasts? And I would just love to hear from you what you might do as far as, or say to our listeners that could be encouraging in this aspect. What would be your best advice to couples out there to encourage them to build a love that truly lasts?
Mm. One day at a time. I think as an
There you
athlete,
go.
you realize like it's not, you don't just become this superstar just overnight. Like it's the daily habits, as we talked about. It's you're in the gym, you're on the field, you're doing extra reps when no one is watching. So I think in a relationship context, it's just a string of good days lead to a string of good years. And also, I think it's very important to take a humble mindset. I think a lot of times it's like, oh, I wish my husband would bring me flowers more or write me more notes. Well, it's like, when was the last note you wrote him? It's
Mhm.
almost kind of like love bomb the other person in a sense of
Yeah.
like, like, okay, you might, maybe you haven't gotten flowers, but like, what can you do? What can you do for your spouse, for your partner? Um, yeah, take kind of, the humble servants route. And I promise, like, if you do that, like, it will be reciprocated. So I think, yeah, just one day at a time, how can you love and serve your partner? And I think they will see like how incredible that is and do that as well for you.
Yeah, and it's like when you make a deposit, the other person feels seen and
Hmm.
oftentimes will respond back. So it becomes kind of this mutual process, right? Of
Right, right.
loving each other well. I also kind of thought about when you mentioned earlier, in your younger years, the list of values that you were looking for in someone, maybe the must-haves or the can't stands. And I think a good practice even in marriage is to kind of ask ourselves, if we had on that list, we want someone who's kind, or we want someone that's willing to kind of think beyond themselves. It's good to kind of put that back on ourselves. Like, am I being kind?
Right.
Am
Yeah,
I
right.
willing to be unselfish, right? Because it's very easy to kind of ask other people to do things, but are we willing to take those steps and to do them sometimes even first, just to get the ball rolling? There's the ball metaphor, Aubrey. I threw it in.
Yeah. There you go. No, I think to your point, the passage of love that about love that everyone quotes in 1 Corinthians 12, love is patient and kind, it doesn't envy or boast, not irritable or resentful. I've often heard like put your name in that. And is that true? Is Aubrey patient and kind? Like how far can you get down that verse
Yes.
before you're like, oh, like,
Right.
okay, maybe I have some things to work on. And I think, yeah,
Yes.
we're quick to look at others, but first, like, yeah, how can we be a more loving partner?
Yeah, well said. And I think this idea of our walk, right? Like, again, being a follower of Jesus, like, how willing am I to allow him to transform me, right? And what are the things that I'm willing to do to let Christ continue to be lived out in my life, in my relationship? Boy,
Hmm.
that's good. I think we could go on the road with this. That's great.
No, you're the one who teaches the classes. I want to hear some of your tips and advice.
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm so delighted getting to have this conversation with you. We haven't sat down and talked. We've emailed and, of course, some correspondence through Play for More. But I can see so much in you that is a role model and inspiration on the field, but also off, to give a model of someone who is living the faith walk and is also living that out in marriage and now to be a parent. You really are an inspiration, Aubrey, and it has been a delight to get to visit with you. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for contributing your time and your voice and having conversation that's meaningful as we think about how to help people build a love that lasts.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, it's been a pleasure and great to, yeah, learn from you as well.
Thank you. All right. Until next time, we'll see you later.